Killing Floor 3 is fun, but flawed in my opinion, and this is my review after over 40 hours of gameplay. A quick note before we begin, I've noticed YouTube lowering the quality of my Killing Floor 3 videos on some devices, so my apologies in advance if that happens. I'm going to start my review off on a positive note and say that this game has an awesome heavy metal soundtrack, and Rocky Gray did a great job, along with some help from Synthetic. Search, Destroy, Repeat is probably my fave song on the OST. Moving on to less positive things, the perk selection. It's not great compared to the first two games, holding 5 perks versus 7 on Killing Floor 1 and 10 on Killing Floor 2, with my favorite perks being straight up removed from the game. I often used Berserker on the first game, which was replaced by Ninja, and my favorite perk Support was replaced by Engineer, which honestly feel a lot weaker than their predecessors. In fact, all of the perks but Commando just feel really weak in my opinion compared to the first two games, except for maybe Medic on Solo compared to the Solo Medic on the first game, because you simply couldn't level up Medic on Solo in the first game. So we have less perks that, as a whole, feel weaker than in previous installments. But it gets worse. Characters are locked to perks. This alone isn't absolutely horrendous, but Tripwire promised the community months before the game came out that they were backpedaling on this decision and characters would not be locked to perks. But on July 23rd, 2025, the day before the game came out, Tripwire announced on Instagram that this would be an update at some point down the road later this year, and this really left a bad taste in my mouth. Tripwire delayed the game for several months after its initial release date, with one of the stated reasons being to unlock perks from characters, and then the game launched with characters and perks locked to each other. Massive L here, Tripwire. Massive L. Quick note, I'm writing this on July 31st, 2025. And on the topic of characters being locked to perks, except for Mr. Foster, Commando, and Luna, Sharpshooter, none of the characters, or specialist as the game calls them, have much appeal to me personally and seem kinda bland versus like Anna Larive, Reverend Alberts, or Ray Higgins from Killing Floor 2, just for a couple examples. A lot of lines were just really generic, with characters who just don't stand out and could really be from any game, although Devlin had a single one-liner that made me chuckle a bit. I will give the specialist some credit in their special ability. I was initially super skeptical about this, but I grew to appreciate it, as I expected Killing Floor 3 to have Zeds more akin to the first two games, and mixing special abilities with those Zeds? Bad idea, but with literally almost every Zed being altered, I think abilities fit Killing Floor 3, with things like Commando having a drone that can pick off a handful of Zeds or deal heavy damage to a flesh pound, or the Medic having a healing shield similar to the bubble shields of Halo. I initially looked down on this idea as sort of a get out of jail free card, which it kind of is, but I think it works with the Zed redesigns. A lot of Zeds are more dangerous than before, so it's nice to have an emergency gizmo to fall back on. Something else that's new is the introduction of consumable gadgets, something I'm a little torn over. These consisted of things like traps, supply bags, and the multi-tool, and could be bought in between waves at the trader pod. A decent idea on paper, I guess, but the only really viable gadget is the multi-tool, as it's required to fully open up the maps, with doors and zip lines requiring its usage, so it makes no sense to choose any equipment besides the multi-tool, because you literally handicap yourself if you buy anything else. A decent idea on paper, I guess, but not the best execution. Oh, did I use the word execution? Well, time to mention something I loved about Killing Floor 3, the addition of executions. These brutal one-hitter quitters could be done on Skrakes, Flesh Pounds, Clots, and Cyst, on a Clot and a Cyst when they grab you, or on one of the big guys if you deal enough damage to them. If you hurt a Skrake or a Flesh Pound enough without killing them, they'd sometimes kneel for a couple seconds and glow red, giving you the opportunity to finish them off in one brutal move, like stabbing a Skrake in the top of his skull and then decapitating him with his own chainsaw. Thankfully, you're invincible while pulling off this move against the big Zeds, and not only will it finish off the Skrake or Pound in a single hit, it'll also set off a small explosion, killing all nearby weak Zeds or just dealing heavy damage. But fail to reach a Zeke in time, and he gets back up and you'll have to fight him normally. I love the addition of executions though, although they could get a little glitchy now and then. But anyways, A+ for this idea. Solid gold if you ask me. This really fits the Splatterhouse style of the Killing Floor games. On to other topics, I want to discuss the Zed redesigns. All Zeds except for the basic Clot and Gorfiends had some sort of major redesign. And I like the changes, with a lot of Zeds being more lethal than their ancestors of the first two games, like Skrakes now being able to grab you from afar with a remote claw, Husk having jetpacks. Man, Husks are annoying on this game, but in a good way. Flesh Pounds just being more tanky than before with new attacks, Cyst now having a ranged attack, the list goes on. I did see some people upset over the removal of the Stalker Zed, but I think it might have been a hair too overwhelming to toss them into the mix along with the present Zed overhauls. And on a similar topic to Zeds, I want to shift gears and talk about the boss fights. Sadly, the Patriarch has been removed, but we have 3 enjoyable bosses to battle, being the Impaler, a giant monster who's kind of a giant gorilla, shark, rhino hybrid with rocket launchers and smoke grenades, the Queen Crawler, a giant crawler Zed who can send her babies after you, leap around, bite you, and burrow underground, and finally the Chimera, a nightmarish conglomeration of who knows what, which sort of reminds me of a Mirelurk from Fallout and can take quite a few bullets before succumbing to its demise. Shifting gears to other things, I want to discuss Tripwire's attempt at adding a story mode to Killing Floor, something I did not think would work at all, and it actually did work, and quite well at that. Unless Killing Floor 3 was your introduction to the series, you probably know that storytelling is really a back burner thing in the series, and I think I can safely say that most players, myself included, do not play these games for a story-driven experience, but for arcade pick-up-and-go undead carnage, and I was expecting Tripwire to put in a traditional campaign mode, like on Call of Duty or Halo. But nope, just optional simple objectives that, if you want to do them, provide you with little bits of the story via audio logs, and completing said objectives also earns you supply pass experience points, used towards unlock tokens, I guess they're called, but I'll get more into that shortly. I will say that you can't go back and play story missions once you've beaten them, so a bit of an L there. I guess you could just make another account if you're playing on console and start over from there, but let's be realistic. Almost no one is going to do that and lose all their progress just so they can hear some audio logs again.
How about a brief interlude?
Now, back to the unlock tokens, I guess you could call them that. Oh boy, it is time to talk about the Battle Pass and seasonal content, one of my banes of modern gaming. Tripwire isn't new to DLCs, but this is on another level. In a very bad way. They said, screw traditional DLCs, let's do the exact same thing that Suicide Squad did. You know, that thing that gamers can't stand, and let's add seasonal based content and lock 80% of cosmetics behind a paywall in a premium game. Now, thankfully, some things can be unlocked without having to purchase a stupid battle pass. Please note, I did not purchase one, but you gotta be willing to grind away at objectives to earn XP towards your unlock tokens, which you can spend in this price selection area. I'm not great at explaining this sort of thing, so please try to bear with me. The prize selection is divided up into groups of 5 prizes, and you have to buy prizes, like skins and outfits, in order to move up to the next prize section. But if you don't have a battle pass, you only get to unlock 1 or 2 prizes from each group, but you're still forced to spend your precious unlock tokens on things you can't access in order to progress onto things that you can access. Because that makes sense. Now, you can earn a little bit of in-game currency through this price selection, and it literally took me 24 hours of grinding to earn 500 credits, worth 5 USD, the price of a single weapon skin. So you can literally spend an entire day grinding or just pay $5. Neither option I'm particularly fond of, and as cool as the Boneyard skin is, purchased with my hard-earned 500 credits, I can safely say it was not worth the same price as a pre-inflation Little Caesars Hot and Ready. And like Killing Floor 2, the game also has a lot of specialist cosmetics, but I have never understood why people want to buy items for their characters in a first-person shooter. Weapon skins, I can kinda see, but what good is an outfit for a first-person game? Oh well, whatever. On a positive and similar note, this game does offer a lot of weapon customization, which I wasn't on board with at first, but learned to love it. You can rename guns, add skins, stickers, and keychains unlocked through prizes, but you can also craft enhancing attachments like sights, special ammo, grips, and more, crafted with supplies dropped by Zeds and by smashing text scattered around the maps. And attachments can be upgraded, but every attachment and upgrade adds to the cost you have to pay for said weapon at the trader pod in between rounds, so it's wise to not go overboard and just get what you need. And as far as I can tell, there's no limit to the amount of custom weapons you can create, so a plus there. Now, a couple downsides to the weaponry of the third Killing Floor game is A. There aren't many guns, only 4 per perk, not counting your sidearm pistol. And B, guns are just so expensive in this game compared to the first 2 titles. Not really sure why this decision was made, maybe inflation in the world of Killing Floor, who knows, but I kinda wish there were more guns in the game. Tripwire said more firearms are on the way for whatever that's worth, but I'm reviewing the game based off its current state. One of the last main things for me to discuss is the level up system for perks. In the second game, you had your choice of 1 of 2 skills every 5 levels, so not a lot of choices, and Killing Floor 3 did a complete overhaul of the perk and skill system, giving you a new skill pretty much every other level, with a lot more options to choose from and the ability to upgrade skills using proficiency points earned by just playing the game. So this technically did make the game more complex than the first 2 titles, so I can see how this would be off-putting to some fans who prefer the simpler style of the first 2 games, but I think it added a very nice touch to things personally, although it did have some weird downsides, like grenade and medkit slots being level locked versus having infinite recharging medkits on the first 2 games, and being able to hold 5 grenades, I think, right off the bat, no leveling up required, versus the default 2 grenades on Killing Floor 3. And speaking of the medkit limit, this was kind of a mixed bag thing for me. I know a lot of people dislike it, but it does add an extra layer of challenge to the game, knowing you only have so many syringes to get you through a wave, versus having unlimited heals on prior games, as long as you could hold out long enough for your syringe to recharge. So this is sort of a positive and a negative thing that just pans out into a neutral for me. But at least your health restores when you visit the trader if you happen to be out of medical supplies. Another mixed bag thing for me was the removal of door welding, a critical mechanic of what Killing Floor is in my opinion. It was replaced by simply shutting a door by pressing X on an Xbox controller. But this button layout, well, it held some problems, as the devs decided to give buttons multiple functions. You tap X to reload your gun, but also to use zip lines and to shut doors. And on countless occasions, I just wanted to reload my gun on the run, not realizing I was near a door or a zip line. Pressing X and then locking myself in a hallway with an angry flesh pound on my tail, or accidentally flying away on a zip line and winding up somewhere that I didn't want to be. Another shared button was the flashlight button, which is pressing right on the D-pad. I learned the hard way that this is also the button to skip the trader, and on multiple occasions, I just wanted to turn my flashlight on or off, and then I accidentally skipped a trader round and was left high and dry with low ammo and no med packs. I have no idea why Tripwire wanted to remap these buttons when the controls of Killing Floor 2 worked just fine. Let me know in the comments if anyone else struggled with this. Changing over to some positives, I will praise this game for its blood and gore, staying true to the Killing Floor nature. Also, the introduction of exploding traps, like barrels or gas valves, was nice. I don't recall seeing these on the first two games. And Tripwire tossing in special waves was nice, like waves with extra flesh pounds but your special ability regenerates faster, or a wave with more husk but you do extra damage. Stuff like that, although I have to criticize the locked 5 wave limit. On the first two games you can adjust your wavelength to some extent, and on Killing Floor 3 it's just 5. Also, the removal of a 4th difficulty option sucks, and makes it look like this game was just rushed out the door before it was finished, as the devs said they're working on adding a 4th difficulty option. Actually, the game technically isn't finished. For those who caught the dev update YouTube livestream on August 1st, the devs pretty much admitted the game is still in development, meaning we were sold an incomplete product, and it shows. Wrapping up my review, a couple minor notes before I give this game my final grade. 1. This game does not show the names of the songs playing in the background versus this being present in the first two titles. 2. Graphically, the game technically looks good, but I can't quite put my finger on it, but the second game just looks better in my opinion despite being much older. Anyone else feel this way, or is it just me? And 3. Performance. This game did have some hiccups, mostly bosses freezing in place sometimes, or executions going a little wonky, but I did have one glitch where I finished a match and my progress didn't save. But the worst glitch is that twice I completed all weekly objectives required for getting the weekly warrior achievement, and both times the achievement glitched and I did not get my reward, so a huge bummer. In conclusion, like I stated at the start of my video, Killing Floor 3 is fun, but flawed, and it honestly doesn't feel like a Killing Floor game, but more like a combination of Skur Ritual and the two Bright Memory games, and I give Killing Floor 3 a 7.9 out of 10 by my grade scale.
That way it gives you something to work towards.
So yeah, I don't think this is a bad game, just don't expect it to feel like the first two games. This is a fine example, in my opinion, of when you try to cater to everybody, you often cater to nobody. As A, Tripwire said this was an attempt at broadening the fan base of Killing Floor, and B, I have not met anyone who said this is their first Killing Floor game, meaning I've seen no proof that this game helped grow the fan base, but it has sure ticked off a crap ton of old school players and has mixed reviews on Steam at the time of my writing. Maybe not a Payday 3 level flop, but don't be surprised if this FPS finds its way onto an episode of Matt McMuscle's What Happened someday. As far as similar games I would suggest, I'd go with the aforementioned Skur Ritual or COD World War II, at least the first 3 zombies maps that is. And I reckon that wraps things up for me. Definitely the longest review I have done in a long time, and while it's been a lot of work, I have enjoyed making it. As far as our Bible verse of the day, I read from Joshua chapter 24, verse 15 NIV. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods of your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. And that is it from me today. For newcomers here, I mostly review and discuss video games on my channel, with a bit of a focus on zombie and horror games, but I cover other topics as well, so feel free to check out some of my other vids if that maybe sounds interesting. As always, none of my content is made by AI. I don't consent to my voice, gameplay, and likeness being modified, copied, or replicated by AI in any way. Thanks for watching, hope everyone has a great day, take it easy, Jesus loves you, peace.
Who saw that?